Hey, welcome back to the studio. This is My Day of Play, where you're taken into the real events and actions of how it really takes place before editing and cleaning up. This is how it really went. Today, I spent time with CNN's chief political correspondent, Dana Bash, and author David Fisher. Their book is titled America's Deadliest Election. It was followed by a fun conversation with an award-winning screenwriter and playwright who now writes trilogies for young adult readers, Moira Buffini. And we'll wrap things up with Nat Segaloff, who not only helped market the movie Towner Inferno 50 years ago, but his new book, More Fire, dives into the experiences of making the movie with the actors and crew. This is My Day of Play, completely unedited in the way of meeting the wizard behind the curtain.
Keep on schedule or even ahead a little bit if we can. Morning, Arrow.
Hey, guys, how are you doing?
Good. All right, listen, you've got 7 minutes. Your out is 03, so take it away.
Good morning, Dana and David. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I like your screenshot there.
Thank you so much. I just wish more people would practice what the acoustic is all about. It's about going up to your worst enemy and showing you have confidence and saying, hey, look, we can all get along.
Amen.
I'm so proud of you for writing this book, the two of you. And the reason why is because I am so addicted to knowing what history is, because it helps us understand where we are in this place of history. And this book right here opens up my eyes and heart to a lot of things that were going wrong, but how does it lead up to where we are today?
Oh, boy. It leads up to where we are today. I will just give you one answer to that, because there are lots of different threads and roads that we can follow for different aspects of it. But the one that really burns me up the most is the racial strife that continues in America.
Yep.
And it was made so much worse, obviously, because of Jim Crow and the way that Black Americans were treated for 100 years in the United States of America. And the reason Jim Crow was allowed to happen is because of a Supreme Court decision that came directly from a massacre in Louisiana, the Colfax Massacre, during the 1872 gubernatorial election that we write about in this book.
How did you jump onto this story, the two of you? Was it because you're doing so much research about today and in your heart you said, let's go back and find something out?
Actually, it was a suggestion from Dan Abrams,
really,
who is an old friend and whom I've worked with before, who called and said, you really should look at this, and I began looking at it, and I thought, who would be the right person to tell this story to America? And as a longtime admirer of Dana's, and I reached out to her, and she was as startled as I was to know that this happened, and we knew nothing about it, and the impact that it had on America for 100 years, this one little election. And that's how it started. And that was the beginning of our journey.
Now, Dana, you know how we always throw things underneath the carpet. I can't imagine where you even began to find this story, because I'm still startled by this story, wondering, why didn't my grandmother or my grandfather tell me of this? Why is it that it just suddenly stopped?
Well, we know the reason for that. And I didn't learn about it either in school. And the reason for that is because history was taught by the people who had the power to shape that history. And it was white America. And that's why. I mean, full stop. There's no way to sugarcoat it, nor should we sugarcoat it. And now, in much, much, much more modern times, recent times, thank goodness, as a society, we have tried to be better about having a more fulsome understanding of America. I mean, why was Juneteenth just made a federal holiday in 2021? Same answer. So we're doing better, and David and I hope that this book contributes to that.
David, with your connection now with someone that works at CNN, a beautiful journalist when it comes to really bringing the story out, do you find yourself putting this in moving pictures, as in a documentary?
We were just talking about that. Um, it is such a compelling story, and again, I repeat, the parallels in many cases are word for word as what we're talking about today. I mean, literally, you had crowds in the street chanting, "Hang him, hang him." You had a contested election in which the means used to prevent people from voting are exactly the same as the claims being made. You had an assassination attempt on one of the candidates. You had one of the candidates claiming to be the most abused man in America. On and on and on. The parallels were astonishing. And what it led to, I mean, we're all asking, all Americans are asking today, where are we going? What's next? And this is the roadmap. Unless we change, unless we start doing things different, here is the violence, here is the Supreme Court making decisions that change the direction of the country.
The two of you are a voice. You're activators. You're giving us a story. 7 minutes is not enough time with you guys, but I'm just so blessed to have the honor to help share this book with those that are picking up and listening to this show. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you for being so excited about it. We really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
You guys be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you.
Hello and good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, fantastic. My favorite Kansas City Chief.
Yes, and I'm so excited about tomorrow.
Oh, you guys have a Thursday game?
Here,
oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
You guys have a Thursday game?
What did you say, Errol?
You have a Thursday game?
We have yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're the first team to start, the kick off the NFL season.
There you go. Yeah, see how spoiled you guys are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Errol, your phone is breaking up a lot.
How about that?
Oh, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're the first team that starts tomorrow, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's going to set the tone for the brand new season.
Yeah, we're trying. So, let's see. I cannot pronounce her name. I thought her name, the talent, I thought her name was Mariah, but Moria, I think she pronounced.
Moria. Oh, my goodness. And let me write that down.
I think it's Moria, but you can ask her.
I'll put it in a very creative way, bringing it up in the subject.
Okay. That sounds good. And so this will be aired on what day?
Let me go look. I thought I had this thing down. Okay, so I've got it for Monday morning.
Okay.
And that's the 9th. The 9th.
Let's see. The 9th. Okay.
Yep.
09 till 4. All right. So hard out is at 9:59.
Beautiful.
Your time.
Beautiful.
9:58, somewhere around there. All right. Hold on just a second, and we'll get you through.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And they're ready. Have a great one.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we have Errol Collins.
Hello and good morning. How are you doing today?
Hello. I'm very good, Errol. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, I'm very excited to share a conversation with you because there's so much that we have in common as creative minds. But let's begin it off by, I want readers to know how you pronounce your name.
My name is Moira Buffini.
I love it. That in itself has got a poetic vibe to it.
It's Irish Italian, so yeah, you can make of it what you will.
Well,
Moira Buffini.
I want listeners to be able to go into a local bookstore, and I want them to call your name out personally, so that people know what it is, and and they're not going to be standing there at customer service going, I don't know, who are you talking about? So now that it's so important, that name on that book.
It is indeed. I've had it pronounced many different ways. Moira will do.
I love it. In bringing the book together, where I'm super fascinated here is that you're setting free a debut novel. I mean, it's like you've got to give yourself permission as a creative soul, knowing that there are other people out here in the real world whose books are hidden underneath their beds or in attics. How did you give yourself that permission to write?
I think it's a story I've wanted to write for such a long time, literally decades. And my real profession is I'm a screenwriter and a playwright. So I've written creatively all my life. When lockdown hit, all my work vanished overnight. I had a play in rehearsal. That was never going to happen. So all my work vanished. And I thought, well, why don't I just write this story that's been bugging me for all these years? And I began to write it in prose. And I just found I was absolutely loving it. Every day I would get up and enjoy writing in prose. I think the difference is with a play, you're writing for a big audience. With screenwriting, you're writing for a massive audience. And with a novel, it felt the whole time like I was just writing for one person. And I really loved it. I thought the intimacy of that was so nice and so refreshing.
That's how they teach us in radio. It is the power of one-on-one. There's only one person that you're sharing a conversation with. Don't talk to them, talk with them. And that's what I feel inside your story here, is that you're sharing a story with me.
Yeah, I hope that is how it feels, because that's how it was to write. I loved it, and I learned a lot. The other great thing about writing a novel is, when you're writing for the screen, everybody keeps telling you to cut all the time. They keep saying, shorter, we need it shorter. You can't have that scene. That scene's got to be a page shorter. And people were telling me, my editors kept telling me to write more.
Yep.
Write more, fill in the colors. What's she thinking here? What does this look like? Tell us what else he says. All this kind of stuff. And I love that. I just love being able to be expansive like that, which you can't really do in drama, because it's very, very distilled, So the novel was a real joy.
So being that playwright and that screenwriter, you get to see moving objects. When you were writing, did you envision those characters, Elsa and Nightingale, were they moving through your imagination as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what years of writing for the screen has taught me, is just I just think visually. And I saw them, and that was so great, building the world as well. I mean, this is a story that's set thousands of years in the future. So you're kind of building a society from scratch. You're building, I started by building a village, and then I thought, okay, this other character here is in the capital city. What does that look like? What's that society like? So you're really building layer by layer. It's like painting a huge landscape, And you sort of think, okay, what's their level of technology? What's their religion? What's the economy like? What are the gender politics here? Are they kind of equals, or is there what's going on with gender politics? So there's all this kind of stuff to think of, and of course the society I drew is a society at war. So then you have to colour in who's the enemy, what's their society like, how are they, who's gonna draw us into that world. So it's like painting a huge, huge canvas, and I did it layer by layer, just day by day, layer by layer, colouring in a little bit more, and thinking everything through.
I love the way that you're asking yourself questions. I call that defragging. I ask the questions and then I question the answers, because it really does bring the paragraphs together and it gives them more of a substance or purpose. And you do that perfectly so much in Songlight.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not a story I sat down and planned the whole structure of before I started writing. And in a way, I think that's quite good, because I kept asking questions all the way through it. The big one, of course, being what happens next. And I didn't know. I was really excited. I was on the edge of my seat. What would happen next? So it was like a journey through the unknown, really. into this world, into this story of two young girls who are trying to keep each other alive. You know, one in the village and one in the city, communicating by telepathy, and they're both in these kind of perilous situations, trying to keep each other alive.
But
and I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I think that questioning, I think that's such a key tool of any creative writer, is just keep asking the questions. If you know all the answers, it's less interesting somehow.
Mm-hmm. The way that you use the telepathy, though, see, because I've always believed that we do that and we just don't know it, that we are always speaking with somebody that is in a distant place. And then all of a sudden we think it's our brilliant idea, but maybe it was somebody else that happened to transfer it to us. So, I mean, you really do open up a conversation piece here.
Well, I think it's funny how we all, certainly me anyway, I can't really speak for everyone here, but I've always been drawn to stories about telepathy. And I think perhaps, you know, it's to do with our childhood imagination. Mm-hmm. It's when we're not with our friends, we are still imagining that we are, you know, and we kind of lose that as we grow up. We grow into adulthood and we sort of, you know, lose a big piece of that imaginative play. But I think it's still there in us, really, as is our imagination of being outside of our body. We all imagine that all the time,
yeah.
And I think we certainly dream it, you know. So I think this sort of business of telepathy, it calls on stuff that's all there in our imagination, in our creativity, in our subconscious, and it just kind of gives it a name. And I think. It makes us all, we can all imagine, this is one special power we can all imagine that we have.
One of the things that's so fascinating about your book, Songlight, is the fact that you are very much up to date and in touch with who your reader is and what they're thinking about. Because reproductive freedom is something that is spoken about inside this book. They're talking about it. Their parents may not be talking about it with them, but they're talking about it inside their tight circles.
Yeah, this is the book is the dystopia in the book is very down on women and girls, and women and girls a little like the not too far distant past and the very frightening possible future, do not have agency over their own lives and their own bodies, and this book sort of examines that and kind of. Puts us in the shoes of girls who don't have the freedom that we have enjoyed. And I wrote it for my young self and for my daughter and her friends. And you know, because these are things we have, these are freedoms we've struggled to get, and I think we need to, you know, hold on to them.
Yeah. Yeah. In putting this book together, you made the decision to create a trilogy. I'm a show prep freak. I mean, if I knew that I was going to be writing a trilogy, I mean, I'd freak out. How are you planning this book out, or this story?
Bit by bit, it just keeps growing on me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start from the beginning thinking this is going to be a trilogy. I just got to the end of I just thought, this is more than one book.
Yeah.
I got halfway through book one, I thought, this is more than one book, you know, and then I sort of thought, well, it's got to be three. It's got to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I've written book two now, and I'm beginning to sort of look into planning out book three.
Wow.
And it's definitely, there is life in this world. There's a lot going on.
You know what's really interesting, though, is that because I am a book author and writing those books, so many times people will ask us about our own personal lives and what are our memories. And when you're locked in writing books and stories, that's our memories. And so many people don't tap into that, which is why I love talking with authors, because I hear your voice. I hear your passion. And man, I wish listeners could just really pick up on it as they read the story so they too can be inspired to write.
Yes, I hope so too. I think that's the wonderful thing about writing for a younger audience as well, is that I was really inspired by the books I read at that age. You know, and I think they're the best audience in the world. That young people are so bright, they are so open, and they're hungry for knowledge. They're hungry for everything, for knowledge, for experience. And I think younger readers love YA for that reason. And I think older readers love YA because it taps us back into our own rite of passage,
Yep.
you know, which really isn't very far from any of us, you know.
Well, yeah, because I'm glad that you brought that up about adult readers reading YA books. And the reason why is because I'm a true believer that love is ageless. And the fact that you've got a book like this, it allows older people to say, I'm going to step into the story and I'm going to go through the experience.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, to be fair, the older people I know who've read the book have really loved it.
My wife included.
And I think I'm a secret reader of YA. I never stop reading it. And I think a lot of adults are the same, you know, that it's just a really wonderful genre for letting your imagination free and for talking, you know, giving us all a prism to look at our world, but through a really imaginative, creative sort of landscape.
Wow. You got to come back to this show in the future, especially when you're ready to pop that second book out, because I want to continue this story with you.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd really love to. Thank you so much for having me on.
Will you be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is he there?
I am here. Are you there?
Ah, he is here. I thought you were up conjuring some good weather for us up here.
Dude, it's a beautiful fall day down here. It's nice and cool. We're like, we were down in the 60s.
Oh, yeah. Current temperature right now, 70 and sunny. When I walked out the door this morning, 58.
Wow. Love it. Love it.
Well, here's somebody who's always in the heat, and that's Nat.
Good morning.
Hello, Arrow, again.
How are you
doing? We're doing this again.
Absolutely. I mean, you always bring the story, Nat.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I do for a living, same as you do. So we're matched up. Listen, what business are we in, right? We're supposed to entertain people, and I think we are.
Absolutely. This movie, I got to be honest with you, though, way before 9/11, I always feared going into a tall building because of this movie, Towering Inferno.
You were quite right. And those of us who worked on the film and who did publicity of the film not only had to balance doing publicity for the movie, but also talk about fire safety. For the book, I was fortunate to have Brian Cummings, who was the former fire chief of Los Angeles, as my advisor on fire safety on one of the chapters in particular. And so I hope we're accurate. But the movie changed laws all over the country. Wow. People were afraid of high rises, and they should have been, because when you think about it, a ladder truck only goes up maybe 7 stories. And so if you're in a skyscraper that's set on like a shopping plaza, you're not going to get out. That's all there is to it. Wow. And the tragedy of 9/11 reminded us of fire safety. Even though the buildings were built to code, there's still just so much you can do.
Yeah. Hindsight, what did you learn in putting this book together? Because, I mean, you lived it, but now looking back, what did you learn more?
Ironically, what I learned was what I didn't learn, and that is Irwin Allen, the producer, who was born Erwin Grinovit, who had 3 brothers and 2 parents. That's all we know about him. He seems to have gone through his entire career denuding his files of anything of a personal nature, even his archives. And I had friends who managed the archive and some friends who've looked through the archive. There's nothing about him in there that's not work related. He was a workaholic. He took home every script for Lost in Space, Time Tunnel, every series he ever made. He would work on them. He was a perfectionist, but we don't know who he was.
Wow. Now, isn't that opposite human? Because a lot of us want to leave things behind so that people of the future can understand what it is that we've done. I mean, for somebody to go and erase it like that, it's like, now I'm fascinated. I want to know Irwin Allen.
I have turned down publishers who want me to write a book about him because there simply is nothing there. I'd wind up with a pamphlet. So what I did was I put everything I could find into the Towering Inferno. Now, maybe something will come out. His effects were just auctioned by one of the auction houses here in Los Angeles. And I was on communication with both of them, trying to find out if there's anything that they weren't putting up there, production records, things like that, so I could get a hold of it. They couldn't find a thing. It must exist somewhere. And if it does exist, and as I said, people I know have gone through them, there's nothing, Who did he date? What restaurants did he like? What size suits did he wear? All we know is that he had a toupee, and he was a bit OCD toward the end, but he was a great producer and a manic person as far as safety. Nobody was hurt on the Towering Inferno. Nobody. Maybe a cut on a finger. He was so protective of people. People loved him, but he could be maddening.
What were the sets like? Because, that movie looked like you were physically there in that moment. And, you totally don't believe in Hollywood magic, but it's exactly what happened.
The sets were practical, but of course, some of them were built a few feet above the ground so that when there was water, the water could drain. Wow. They also were insulated, and they were staffed with a lot of fire protective people. I'll tell you one story that's in the book that nobody else has asked me. There's probably a good reason for that. I used to work for 20th Century Fox in Boston. And one day I came in and somebody had put these lime green carpets all over the office. If you can imagine chartreuse or whatever the color is that outlines your Zoom image, it was that bright bilious green. Who would choose something like that? Well, when I finally saw the movie, I realized that's the color carpet they use for the offices in the skyscraper in the Towering Inferno. Whoa. Somebody in the studio had very simply ordered more carpet than they needed, and they used it to put in their local sales offices on Irwin's budget. So that speaks to the sets of the Towering Inferno. I'm sure there were a lot of people who backed up their pickup trucks and took the furniture with them afterwards. That wasn't burned, of course.
Wow. When you have a movie like this that's been around for 50 years, one of the things that I would love to do again is watch it at an outdoor drive-in, because I saw it inside Cine 3 in Billings, Montana, but I also saw it at Sage 4. I just could not get enough of this movie.
I can't imagine watching it in a drive-in, except it's probably safer, considering that you can always drive away if there's a fire. But it did create. Can you imagine watching it in a multi-screen cinema inside of a skyscraper? Can you imagine that?
No. Or these new, what is it? What do they call them? 4D things that Regal has now, where you go in and the seats are moving and it's got the scent and the wind and all that. Oh my God, that would be quite the experience.
I guess somebody would have to set you on fire to create the same experience of an earthquake. But, there was a joke at the time. The movie Earthquake was out a few years before the Towering Inferno. And the joke, this is so old, it's got cobwebs, that they were going to release Earthquake and the Towering Inferno as a double feature, and they were going to call it Shake and Bake.
How did Irwin Allen put all of these actors together in one movie?
Well, money, of course, helped, but he had made the Poseidon Adventure, which everybody wanted to be a part of after it became a success. Nobody wanted to make the movie originally. The biggest star in the Poseidon Adventure was Shelley Winters.
Yes, it was.
And you can define that any way you want. When he made the Towering Inferno, of course, he was a major producer, and he was able to go to Steve McQueen and Paul Newman to offer them leads. And, of course, once you get the major stars, the others follow along because they want to be involved in the project. Interestingly, Irwin Allen offered the role of the architect, played by Paul Newman in the movie, originally to Steve McQueen, and Steve McQueen turned it down. Now, McQueen has a very, very good sense of self-preservation, and this was explained to me by Scott Newman, who was Paul Newman's son, who unfortunately is no longer with us, saying that the reason McQueen wanted to play the fireman was not because he could ride around on fire trucks, but because he was the only major character in the film who's not guilty of something.
Ooh.
We have a corrupt politician, we have a con man in Paul Newman. We have corrupt builders of the building, but McQueen was the only major character, and he had as I said, a sense of self-preservation to know that he wanted to play the fireman. Newman then played the architect, who did not supervise the final construction of the building, and that's his guilt. Faye Dunaway is guilty in a sense of being a reporter. She's a managing editor of a newspaper who does absolutely no reporting in the course of the whole film. If you can imagine a fire in the world's largest skyscraper, here's a reporter on the scene and does nothing. So everybody has something to pay for. And that's, of course, what makes disaster films work. Everybody has sinned.
Yeah.
And the disaster will get those who have sinned the most, except for those who are redeemed.
See, I love it when people break things down just like that, and because it allows that character then to evolve through themselves, and because with no guilt around, my God, all he had to do was just play out that role.
You need rich characters, and that's part of what Sterling Sullivan was able to do when he created them. The axiom is that every character has to have a secret. And it's a secret that the actor has to know but may not tell anybody else. That's a very good way to embark on an acting career, to pretend to hide something from the audience. And in the contrivance of hiding something, you reveal yourself. All of these great, great actors in the Towering Inferno weren't just collecting a paycheck. Yeah. They were doing a job inhabiting real characters and, of course, cutting through a lot of the red tape for the audience identification purposes of, you haven't got to say, that's Paul Newman, he's an architect, he's having family troubles. No, it's Paul Newman. That's how you start.
Did you get a chance to look over the manuscript? Because, I would love to see this in print as those actors were receiving it.
You mean the script?
Yes,
or what?
yes.
Oh, yeah, there were several versions. In fact, there was new versions of the script every day as Irwin demanded changes.
Really?
I was able to see a number of the scripts, but it doesn't matter because what's there is what's there. One of the early scripts I read, interestingly, has Steve McQueen entering the film far sooner than he does. He doesn't come on now until about a half an hour when he's the fire chief who responds to this already burgeoning fire. In fact, he lives on a houseboat with a son who wants to be like him and with a wife. And this is the whole part of the backstory of his character, which was cut out. I don't know if it was never filmed, probably wasn't, but it certainly isn't in the movie now. And so when he arrives on the scene, his character is already developed for those who read the script. Probably that was the material that Irwin gave to Steve McQueen to induce him to sign on the film, but it's not there now.
Mm-hmm. Are you shocked that Hollywood has not redone this movie or just rebuilt it in a way with modern day actors? Because it seems like they're on that kick right now.
I have a sense that the tragedy of 9/11 pretty much killed everybody's idea of making a skyscraper fire movie.
I was going to ask you about that. In fact, in my notes, I said here in 2024, Towering Inferno has a completely different vibe to it.
It does, and you can't help but watch it now. And by the way, it's on YouTube for free as we speak.
Wow.
That really is chilling in ways you wouldn't imagine it would be, because it's so realistic, and you can just imagine what the people were doing in the World Trade Centers and the other buildings. It's just something we really can't talk about.
You have always been so connected to the story of the actors, the musicians, and the people that really bring the entertainment to us. What is your drive? And was it just because you had the interest as a kid? I mean, to write about John Belushi, the only thing that most of us ever know is what was in the National Enquirer. But you take us on a journey.
I was fortunate to know John Belushi's, widow, who was just passed a few weeks ago. That's Judy Belushi. Who had married a friend of mine from college, which is how I met her. And when I was signed on to do some A&E biography episodes, it turned out Judy had videotaped a lot of interviews with John's friends to try to get the information from them before the memories faded. Yep. Some of the stuff was on MTV in a special, but she allowed me to use the film clips and the interviews, and we created the John Belushi biography for the A&E biography series. And both Judy and Jimmy Belushi kind of were our godfathers on the thing, so it was accurate. We didn't hide the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But as Judy said about Bob Woodward's excellent book on Belushi, Wired, she said, well, it was accurate what he wrote, but he didn't write about the good stuff. We put the good stuff in the biography. And I wish I had met Belushi, because he must have been such an extraordinary person. Certainly, he must have been if she loved him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to sit across from him and to watch his wild imagination would be like sitting down with Robin Williams and having an honest-to-God conversation about going to the grocery store.
These are the reasons that we watch movies.
Yeah.
Your Aunt Fanny is not going to make a movie star, but these people are the most attractive and intelligent, or at least the most attractive and charismatic people in the world come to Los Angeles. And we wonder why half of them turn up on TMZ.
So, Nat, I got to ask you a personal question, because you get into these into the storylines and get into the soul of these creative people. How do you react, and what do you do when someone like Jim Carrey comes out and says, "I do not exist. That is only a character"? That line from him changed me, because it makes me wonder, in the everyday world, is that what's going on, where people just see themselves as characters more than people?
Well, Jim Carrey, I think, is far more centered than most people. But as the line comes out in the bracket in Wilder, Sunset Boulevard, a dozen press agents working overtime can do terrible things to the human spirit.
Yeah.
I've known enough actors, I've known enough normal people, And can you imagine, and I think John Milius mentioned this, can you imagine being an actor when the whole world revolves around you? And then he says, and what kind of a world is it if you're the one it revolves around? These are people who look at themselves in the mirror all the time, not because they're really interested in themselves, but to check and see how they look in public. Now, you can't see me right now, but I look like a Lord of the Rings character. Nobody cares, okay? But I'm not an actor. And I can understand, because if they get a carbuncle, they're out of work. And so it's a whole different thing with performers or any creative people. If you don't know where it comes from, you don't know if it's going to stay. Yeah. And that drives so many people out here in this business. It especially drives the business people who have no particular talent for creativity. All they can do is try to recognize it. And in fact, that's something producer Jerry Wald said. He said, there's no lack of talent in Hollywood. There's only a lack of talent who can recognize talent.
Wow.
That's why things are so topsy-turvy right now. It's all with the bean counters. It's not with the people who actually know how to make movies.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be a generational pull with these people that are doing things on TikTok and things, because I think that's where the next legends are being born right now. But the thing is, though, does that mean that movies will become shorter?
I don't know how short they'll become. I think there's still something about getting out of the house and going to a movie, although that's less so now. But it's in transition. Hollywood is going through a transition right now as much as it did when talkies arrived or when television arrived. The dust is going to settle at some point. We just have to hope that the creators have the freedom to do what they want to do, and they aren't hemmed in by the bean counters, as I said, who won't let them do certain things. I mean, I'm excited that Francis Ford Coppola has a movie coming out called Megalopolis, and he sucked $120 million of his own wine money in. That's one person's point of view. Now, there's a lot of stuff floating around about it, but until I see the movie, I won't know. And I remember something about Coppola. Boy, are we off the subject. I went to the press conference where he showed Apocalypse Now to the American press for the first time. And at the press conference, he had all these people in front on the dais, and people were asking, what about the budget? What about the monsoons? What about Martin Sheen? And finally, Coppola said, guys, talking to his publicist, you got to get me out of here. This isn't working. And one reporter stood up and said, Mr. Coppola, we saw your movie last night, and I think we have to acknowledge that it is a new step in the progress of cinema. We have to say that. Yeah. Now, I wish that reporter had been me, but it's so hard to recognize progress when it's right in front of us. We need more of that. We need more people like Coppola who will actually put themselves on the line. But we need critics, and we need executives, and we need audiences who want to see something new and not something recycled.
Right. Man, I'll tell you how we got onto Coppola. It's because we saw that greatness back in the 1970s. We saw how this movie changed everything. And now we start comparing everything on the sidelines on how things, it even changed Hollywood in storytelling and in story building. Because it all, to me, the movie Towner Inferno set a new standard of height.
And nobody, including Irwin Allen, could come back to it after that. He did stay too long at the circus. The film he made after that was When Time Ran Out, which was about a volcano, which is one of the worst films ever made. That's on YouTube, too. Paul Newman was in it because his deal with Irwin Allen to make the Towering Inferno was he would do 2 pictures. Steve McQueen signed the same deal, but didn't make the second film.
How do you change into the future? Because, I mean, as that writer, and as you know, the readers are changing as well. But I mean, because you just said a few minutes ago, you said, I'm not the actor. And it's like, wait a second. I read your material. I feel your emotion that you're giving to me. I really dive into it. To me, that is acting on a page.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. I never quite thought of it that way. And thank you so much for putting it in my mind that will now haunt me for the rest of my career. I don't know. All I know is I try to empathize with what I'm writing about. The next book actually was kind of a challenge that way. It's coming out in May, and it's called The Rambo Report. And it's the first book authorized by David Morrell, who created Rambo in his 1972 novel First Blood, the first book about the Rambo phenomenon and the Rambo character. And I had to kind of identify with Rambo, who was a very complex character and very much maligned and very much controversial. And I had to try to handle all of that in writing emotionally, but not judgmentally, about who the character was. So we'll see if it works. And I'm sure we'll be back in touch when that comes about.
Will you put focus on the one film that not too many people saw where it didn't go into sequels? Because during the anniversary, they re-released that, and we saw what really happened in the original movie.
You're going to have to help me with this one. I've seen all the movies.
He dies.
God knows how many times.
Yeah, he died because they when they changed that movie, they saw something.
Oh, in the book, yes.
Yeah,
yes, in the book. Yeah, right. The special features. He dies, and that was something that Stallone fought for Rambo to live. The point being, he didn't want to convey to veterans that the only way out of the PTSD they suffered in Vietnam was to die or commit suicide, as so many tragically have. He wanted to show there was some hope. And that's why the movie exists. The First Blood exists as it does.
See, this is every bit the reason why this generation needs you, and those that are in the future as well, because you're leaving your mark. How can people reach out and get more of what you do?
There's something called Amazon.
Yeah.
And that's there. This book comes out from Bear Manor Media. It's doing quite well for them, and I'm so happy. It's a print-on-demand publisher, so there may be some delay in getting a copy. But bearmanormedia.com is where you can order directly, or, of course, from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of our fine online booksellers. It's a book that kind of has a great deal of interest for me because I got liberated from publicity by doing publicity for the Towering Inferno in 1974. Wow. And now in 2024, 50 years later, I'm able to kind of close that chapter and move on to other things. But it's nice to be able to have written about it and to have put my memories in. But it isn't a memoir. I mean, it talks about the movie itself and Irwin Allen and the Poseidon Adventure and the actors and everybody else and fire safety. But it's a kind of a period at the end of a very long, rambling sentence.
Wow. You got to come back to this show anytime in the future. You know that door is always going to be open for you, Nat.
Rambo and I will be back in April or May.
All right, man. Well, you've been
Thanks,
brilliant,
Arrow.
okay?
Thanks so much. It's always wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Wow.